Hello and welcome to this video where I'll be sharing with you some information we've gathered which will inform you about what journal acceptance rates really signify. I'm Rachel Herbert, a Senior Research Evaluation Manager and an Associate of the International Centre for the Study of Research, or ICSR, at Elsevier. The mission of the ICSR is to further the study of research and thus to contribute to the evidence base supporting the practice of research strategy, evaluation and policy. What I'm going to talk about today should help you decide how much to factor in a journal's acceptance rate when deciding where to submit a manuscript. But first of all, let's talk about what the journal acceptance rate is. Of course, journals cannot publish all manuscripts that are submitted to them. The editorial board must decide which research is deemed worthy of and relevant for publication in a journal. This process is a form of gatekeeping, choosing from unsolicited manuscripts submitted to the journal. The editorial team accepts some and rejects others, often after peer review. A way to quantify this process is the journal acceptance rate. Quite simply, the journal acceptance rate is the number of accepted manuscripts divided by the number of submitted manuscripts. Although for completeness, it's worth noting that there is actually another way to compute a journal acceptance rate. In this second definition, it is the share of decisions that are calculated. This will be particularly useful for those monitoring the peer review process closely. The former is the definition most commonly reported on journal and publisher web pages, and we believe this is the definition of journal acceptance rates that authors interact with, and so we'll use this one throughout the video. So as I mentioned, the acceptance rate appears regularly on journal homepages and via journal finder tools. But what does this seemingly straightforward measure signal to an author considering where to submit a manuscript? Several practical factors influence the number of manuscripts that each journal accepts: the quality, interest, or importance of submitted manuscripts, the number of and relationships to other journals in the same field, and perhaps any submission or peer review backlogs or page limitations. There's also anecdotal evidence that some journals will target a particular acceptance rate. Each of these factors will have a varying impact on each journal's acceptance rate. The drivers of submission rates, on the other hand, are a little different. The size of the field by volume of funding or number of researchers and publications, the number of and relationships among journals, journal brand awareness or perceived prestige, and the potential impact of successful publication for the author. For example, in some cases, being published in certain journals can help secure future research funding. The metrics toolkit suggests that the acceptance rate can be used as a proxy for perceived prestige and demand as compared to availability. Yet overlapping drivers for the two factors determine an acceptance rate. And the concept of separating the wheat from the chaff is pushed to the limit when journals such as Nature and Science have acceptance rates of 10% or less. Being rejected from extremely selective journals surely can't tell us much about an individual manuscript. If articles cannot be judged on what journal they are rejected from because we cannot distinguish the reason for rejected, can a journal's acceptance rate really be a signal of quality or rigorousness of the peer review process? If not, then what does the acceptance rate really mean? In 2020, the ICSR at Elsevier explored a set of 2,371 journals and their acceptance rates in 2017. The majority of the journals, 82%, are published by Elsevier. The journals represent a broad set of subject areas, journal types and ages, with all but the social sciences and arts and humanities well presented. The journals in the dataset had acceptance rates ranging from 1.1% to 93.2% in 2017. The average was 32%. So overall, journals tend to accept fewer articles than they reject. To determine what acceptance rates signify, we took the approach of comparing acceptance rates with the range of other indicators and attributes of the journals to see what correlated with high or low acceptance rates. Firstly, journal size. We hypothesized that although journals vary in size, they may be in competition for the same authors and manuscripts. If a small journal feels at risk of being outpaced by a large journal, then it may lean towards a higher acceptance rate to help make itself more appealing to authors. Overall, though, there's no strong relationship between journal size and acceptance rate. In our data, the relationship between high acceptance rates and small journals is so weak as to almost be non-existent. For small journals in particular, those with fewer than 100 publications in 2017, we see that they span the full range of acceptance rates. Larger journals seem to have a slightly smaller but still wide range of acceptance rates, with most clustered between 10 and 60%. Next, journal age. We hypothesize that if younger journals are focused on establishing their scope and brand, then their acceptance rate may be higher than older journals. The journals we studied ranged in age from just launched to almost 200 years old, and the average age for the journals overall was 26 years. Again, our analysis shows almost no relationship between age and acceptance rates, just a very weak suggestion that older journals tend to have a slightly lower acceptance rate. While the very highest acceptance rates do just about belong to the younger journals, our data shows journals aged anywhere from 1 to 60 years with acceptance rates of well over 80%. Journal citation impact. We hypothesized that if journal acceptance rates are a signal of journal citation impact or quality, then we might expect a negative correlation between the acceptance rate and a metric such as the field-weighted citation impact, or FWCI. This measures citation impact but takes into account attributes that tend to influence the citation rate, from publication year to document type to subject area. Our data shows no clear relationship between journal citation impact and acceptance rate. There are some high citation impact titles with high acceptance rates and vice versa. The very highest citation impact journals do tend towards lower acceptance rate, but these are journals with FWCI values above 3. As the global average for all journals is 1, these journals are extremely strong performers. Even then, the acceptance rates tend to be between about 5 and 40%. So at best, we might say that journals with extremely high impact tend to have acceptance rates of 40% or below. But that statement hardly seems useful for authors considering where to submit a manuscript. The journal focus. Here we're thinking about articles or reviews. And the hypothesis is, if a journal publishes a relatively high number of reviews, then on the basis that reviews are typically invited by publications, the journal acceptance rates might be relatively high. So for this analysis, we took the proportion of review publications as a share of all publications from 2017. The chart shows 40 journals with 100% review articles published in 2017, but even among these journals, the acceptance rates range from 16 to 89%. Overall, this data shows no correlation between share of review publications and acceptance rates. Next, we look at the open access model. The thinking here is that if open access journals survive financially on article publication charges, then we might expect them to have relatively higher acceptance rates. The majority of the journals in our dataset offer an open access publication choice to authors, hybrid open access, with just a few offering no open access, those are subscription only, or open access which is not paid by the author, subsidized open access. It is those that are gold open access, that is those that only offer an author pays immediate open access model, whose results stand out. The other 3 groups of journals are fairly similar in the distribution of their acceptance rate, but the gold open access journals have the highest average acceptance rate of 46%. This does suggest that the gold open access journals tend to have higher acceptance rates than other journals. However, it should be noted that these journals are also considerably younger on average than the others. Only time will tell whether acceptance rates decrease over time as journals age and open access publishing matures, or whether the financial model of the journal will ensure that the higher acceptance rates become the norm. The last trait we considered was the subject area of the journal. As with many journal level indicators and metrics, we expect differences across the various subject areas. Just a quick reminder, the journals covered in this report have a good coverage of all fields with the exception of social sciences and the arts and humanities. The map that we show here shows the coverage of the journals in the dataset and the range of acceptance rates. Certain areas of the map are certainly more inclined towards lower acceptance rates, economics and computer science in particular, and to a slightly lesser extent, mathematics. In contrast, medicine, nursing, and life sciences tend to have higher acceptance rates. In summary then, we identified that low acceptance rates are demonstrated typically by very large, very old, and very high impact journals, as well as those that are not gold open access. That's a mixed bag of attributes. The relationship to impact is nuanced and not strong enough for us to state firmly that acceptance rates are a signal of quality or impact. Importantly, we found that even where relationships between journal attributes and acceptance rates could be identified, the variance in the acceptance rate is still so high that the findings are unlikely to be useful in the real world. So where does that leave authors considering which journals they should submit their manuscript to? We believe that journal acceptance rates do hold meaning. They indicate to prospective authors the probability of acceptance of their manuscript based on historical success rates at the same journal. However, the acceptance rate is not a signal of other attributes, and so it should be made available alongside other metrics and indicators, but not conflated with them. Fortunately, that's often already the case. Journal homepages that display acceptance rates often also offer the latest journal citation impact metrics, plus information about speed of publication, the scope and peer review process. This combination of information is important and useful for potentially submitting authors. The journal acceptance rate should be stated and taken as exactly what it is. Quite simply, the count of manuscripts that were accepted as a share of those submitted in a given period. If you want to read more about this topic, you can find a full report on the subject on icsr.net. In there, we also compare our findings to others published in the research literature, so there are some useful references too. I hope you found this video useful. Thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.